when people see that I've written about joy and celebration, they assume that those things come very naturally to me. And really, these projects were born much more out of a season that could be characterized by change and loss. And what I noticed is that when I did start to encounter some good news and some breakthrough in our story, I had, moved across the country very suddenly and experienced a lot of unwanted changes there. My husband and I then walked through a long season of infertility that included 5 miscarriages. And so when we did start to experience some breakthrough, I noticed I was really hesitant to embrace the joy that was in front of me. And I was so grieved when I realized that, yes, I've experienced a lot of tangible loss in my life, but a lot of the loss I've experienced has been my refusal to embrace the very good things that God had for me. And I thought, I do not want to miss out on my beautiful God-given life because I am so busy preparing for the worst. And so I started doing research in scripture to understand what celebration looks like. How do we tolerate this vulnerability of joy, which I learned joy is actually the most vulnerable feeling we feel because when we hold something, it's automatically accompanied by the possibility of loss. And when you've been through pain or trauma of any kind, often it can feel safer not to hold that joy at all than to hold something that might break. And so I also did a deep dive into the neuroscience research to understand what's going on in our brains that make it easy to protect ourselves, and learned some ways through some practices that we can hold when joy feels scary.
Oh, I love this so much. You so need to hear that. So I grew up with a mother whom I love dearly, but she was a worrier. And
Uh-huh.
I had to learn to not let worry become the driving force. And one thing that really helped me, and as I was reading your book, titled What If It's Wonderful, I love that. I want to talk about this beautiful title because it's
Sure.
such a an intriguing title. Oh, what
Uh-huh.
if it could be? I think I love the way you just evoke all sorts of potential hope in there. But there's this quote. I don't know who said that, but I know how helpful it was for me in my budding, worry filled life. And it was something along the lines of, I have lived through many a great catastrophe, and most of them have never happened. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want that. I don't want that to be my life. I don't want to have solved all sorts of problems in my head that haven't actually happened, because it's not actually going to make me ready if I actually have that problem, because grace is given to us in our moment of need. And so we're trying to solve problems without the God given grace that we don't have, because we don't have the problem. So God hasn't given us the grace to face it. So, what if it's wonderful? That's the title of your book. We're going to discuss both of your books, What If It's Wonderful, and then the Bible study, Daring Joy. But what if it's wonderful? How is that such a good answer to worry and fear?
What if it's wonderful became my catchphrase, my interrupting question to all my other what if questions. Like what if I try and I fail? Or what if I hope and I'm disappointed? What if I hope and I'm heartbroken? And I just found myself swimming in those worst case scenarios. And like you said, most of which never happened. But what if it's wonderful became my pivot to consider what might God do? How might he move in this situation or in my heart through a hard thing? What might he have for me in this? And I found that so much more empowering and hopeful. And that's where celebration comes in, because it's a practice that actually helps us remember all of the ways in which God has been faithful to us in the past, which actually gives us courage to ask a hopeful question like, what if it's wonderful?
How was Jesus the ultimate man of celebration? How is he our role model in that way?
Oh, what a great question. I mean, I think being able, we see him breaking bread with his followers all the time. We see him um, engaging in relationship and in the rhythms of his faith and remembering the Father's goodness as a way of holding on to hope in the future and imparting hope to his followers. Um, and obviously, he's given us a permanent reason to celebrate because of his work on the cross, that we all have access to a joy that was made possible through his sacrifice. So that would be the biggest celebration for all of us. But I love what you're saying about the feelings, because in American culture, we very much, I think we can idolize feelings. And we value authenticity to the point where if we don't feel like doing something, it feels inauthentic to practice it anyway. And, I'm a marriage and family therapist. So everything you said was spot on in terms of what we're learning about the brain and how change and growth actually happens in our lives. Something I hear a lot as a therapist is, I know that's true, Nicole, but I don't feel it. And I understand it's so much more fun to feel like doing something and then do it. However, that is not the way the brain works. We can think and act our way to a new feeling. We can't feel our way to a new way of thinking and acting. And so, what I usually tell people is when you have the courage to practice this virtue, whether it's celebration or some other growth area, before your feelings get there, that is not fake, that's formation. And I think celebration absolutely falls into that category, whether it's celebrating somebody else that steps on the toes of your own joy, or simply practicing hope in a season that feels hopeless.